She told her friends she barely noticed him. 3 weeks later, she was driving to his apartment at 2 a.m., texting him things she'd never written to anyone. Not because he was handsome, not because he was wealthy, because something had happened inside her nervous system that she couldn't undo. This is the method no one talks about. Not because it's complicated, because it's too effective to be discussed openly. It operates on a psychological mechanism so primal that once you understand it, you'll see it everywhere. In the relationships that last decades, and in the affairs that destroy marriages, the same engine powers both. By the end of this, you will understand why some men become permanent residents in a woman's mind, while others are forgotten before the dinner check arrives. You will possess a technique that doesn't require looks, money, or status. And you will recognize the exact moment to deploy it. The window that opens once, and if missed, never opens again. But first, I need to destroy a belief you've carried since adolescence. The belief is this: attraction is about qualities. Height, income, humor, confidence. You've been trained to think of yourself as a collection of attributes on a checklist, hoping you tick enough boxes to qualify. This is backwards. Attraction is not about what you are. It is about what you make her feel about herself when she's with you. Read that again. The average man walks into an interaction trying to demonstrate value. The powerful man walks into an interaction and creates a psychological experience she cannot get anywhere else. The first is auditioning. The second is architecting. And the architecture I'm about to reveal has a name. Historically, those who understood it called it the imprint. In 12th century France, there was a philosopher named Peter Abelard. Brilliant, arrogant, hired to tutor a young woman named Heloise, the niece of a powerful canon. Within months, she was pregnant. Within a year, they were secretly married. Her uncle, enraged, had Abelard castrated in his sleep. But here's what history books skip over. For the rest of her life, decades after the attack, after he became a monk, after she became a nun, Heloise wrote letters to Abelard that read like fever dreams. She confessed she would rather be his mistress than any emperor's wife. She admitted she replayed their encounters in her mind during prayer. She said his image visited her even at the altar, a castrated monk living in a monastery, and she couldn't stop wanting him. Why? Because Abelard didn't seduce her body. He imprinted on her psyche. He created an experience so intense, so singular that her brain physically rewired around him. He became the standard against which every future feeling would be measured and found lacking. This is not poetry. This is neuroscience with a medieval costume. The imprint works because of a mechanism psychologists call state-dependent memory. Your brain doesn't store experiences in isolation. It bundles them with emotional states. The person present during a peak emotional experience becomes neurologically fused with that feeling. This is why you remember exactly where you were on certain days of your life. The emotion branded the memory, and whoever stood next to you during that branding became part of the brand. Most men create no emotional peaks. They play it safe. They're pleasant. They're appropriate. They're nice. And nice creates no neurological anchor. Nice is background noise. Nice is the color beige in human form. The woman leaves the date. It feels fine. She felt fine before. She feels fine after. Nothing changed inside her. Nothing imprinted. Then she meets a different man. He creates a moment of such intensity, fear, excitement, confession, transgression, that her nervous system lights up like a switchboard. Now, he's fused to that electricity. 3 months later, she's still thinking about the second man. She cannot remember the first man's last name. So, how do you create an imprint? This is where the method becomes uncomfortable, because the technique requires you to do something most men are terrified of. Lead her into emotional territory she has never visited. Not dangerous territory. Not harmful territory. Uncharted territory. Let me be precise. The average interaction between a man and a woman follows a script. She expects certain questions. She has pre-rehearsed answers. The conversation moves on rails. It's comfortable, predictable, dead. The imprint happens when you derail the script. When you ask the question, no one asks. When you say the thing, no one says. When you create a moment that forces her out of autopilot and into presence. Here's a simple example. She's telling you about her job. The script says, you nod, ask a follow-up question, relate it to your job. Nice, forgettable. Instead, you pause. You look at her differently, not predatory, but penetrating. And you say, you don't actually care about any of that, do you? There's something else you think about when you're alone. What is it? The temperature shifts. She laughs nervously. She deflects. But something has changed in the room. You've created a crack in her performance. You've invited her into a space where pretense doesn't work. And if you hold that space, if you don't flinch, don't soften it with humor, don't rescue her from the discomfort, she will step through the crack. What she reveals next, she has likely never told a man on a first encounter. Maybe never told anyone. That revelation is the imprint. Not because you tricked her, because you gave her permission. You created a container strong enough to hold what she usually hides. And in that moment, you became fused to the feeling of being truly seen. She will associate you with that feeling for years. Rasputin understood this at a molecular level. The Siberian mystic, who infiltrated the Russian royal court, was by all accounts physically repulsive, unwashed, crude, wild-eyed. Yet aristocratic women, including the Tsarina herself, became entranced by him, not despite his intensity, but because of it. Rasputin didn't charm, he confronted. He would stare into a woman's eyes until she became uncomfortable. He would speak about sin and salvation in the same breath. He would tell noble women things about themselves that polite society forbade anyone from mentioning. He made them feel exposed, seen, and somehow absolved, all within minutes. Was he manipulating them? Perhaps. But the mechanism was real. He created emotional states so concentrated that women's nervous systems became dependent on him. He was their dealer. Discomfort and release, confession and forgiveness, terror and safety, all compressed into a single presence. When he was finally murdered, poisoned, shot, beaten, and drowned, some of these women grieved him like a lost limb. The imprint doesn't require mysticism. It requires the willingness to create intensity most men are too afraid to generate. Here's where most men sabotage themselves. They intellectually understand the concept. They recognize they need to create peaks. But when the moment arrives, when they could push past the surface, when they could hold silence instead of filling it, when they could ask the question that makes her breath catch, they retreat. They crack a joke. They change the subject. They soften because intensity feels risky, because they've been trained to avoid discomfort at all costs, because their nervous system confuses her discomfort with their failure. This is the critical error. Her discomfort in these moments is not rejection. It is activation. Her nervous system is waking up. She is feeling something she doesn't feel with the men who keep things smooth and pleasant. When you retreat from that discomfort, you teach her that you can't hold space for her real self. You prove you're just another man who prefers her mask. You evaporate from her memory before the night ends. When you stay, when you maintain eye contact, when you let the silence breathe, when you don't rescue her from the intensity, something different happens. She relaxes, not immediately, but eventually, because your steadiness communicates something words cannot. I can handle you, all of you, even the parts you hide. That message bypasses her logic and speaks directly to something ancient, something that has been waiting perhaps for years to be received. The second layer of the imprint is even less discussed. It's called transgressive bonding. Humans are tribal. We perform roles. We follow rules. We maintain masks to fit in, to be accepted, to avoid judgment. But beneath that performance, there is a pressure. The pressure of everything unexpressed, every desire unspoken, every version of herself she's never shown anyone. When you create a space where she breaks a rule, even a small one, and you don't judge her for it, you become her accomplice. This doesn't mean crossing ethical lines. It means crossing her internal lines. Maybe she admits something she considers shameful. Maybe she does something slightly outside her usual character, stays out later than she planned, tells a story she's never told, lets you see her without makeup and without apology. Maybe she confesses a fantasy, a fear, secret resentment. The key is not what she reveals. The key is how you receive it. If you react with surprise, judgment, or even excessive enthusiasm, you break the spell. You remind her that she should feel shame. You push her back into performance mode. But if you receive her transgression with calm acceptance, as if this is exactly who you knew she was, as if nothing she could say would shake you, she experiences something rare: relief. And the relief creates the bond. She thinks he saw the real me, and he didn't leave. He didn't flinch. He's still here. You're now inside the gates, not her outer gates. Anyone with decent social skills can get there. Her inner gates, where almost no one is ever invited. And once you're inside, eviction is nearly impossible. Casanova, the one whose name became synonymous with seduction, left memoirs that reveal exactly this principle. He didn't seduce women with grand romantic gestures. He seduced them by becoming their confessor. He created private worlds where the rules of society were suspended. He made each woman feel she could reveal herself completely without consequence. In one account, he described spending hours simply listening as a woman detailed her frustrations with her husband, her secret longings, her disappointments. He didn't offer solutions. He didn't moralize. He held the space. By the time he made any physical advance, she was already his. Not because of what he said, because of what he allowed her to say. The imprint was complete before the seduction technically began. This is the dirty secret no one wants to acknowledge. Physical attraction follows psychological possession. Get into her mind first, and her body follows. Try to get into her body first, and you remain a stranger. She regrets. Now the practical architecture. The imprint has 3 components executed in sequence. 1. Disarm the performance. This happens through unexpected honesty, not compliments. Those reinforce her mask. Instead, observations that cut beneath what she's presenting. You notice the thing she didn't expect you to notice. You name the thing she thought was invisible. You smile more when you think someone's not watching. The one you're giving me now is for performance. I want the other one. This is a pattern interrupt. It breaks the script. It signals that you're not playing the game everyone else plays. 2. Create the confession. Not through interrogation, through permission. You share first something real, something that carries weight, not trauma dumping that's weak. Something that shows you are unafraid of your own depth. Then you wait. You create space for her to match your vulnerability. You don't ask directly. You let the vacuum do the work. When she fills that vacuum with something true, something she doesn't tell people, you've entered the inner gates. 3. Seal the transgression. Whatever she reveals, you receive without flinching. You normalize it. You meet it with recognition, not reaction. You make her feel that her truth, however dark or strange, was exactly what you expected from her. Then, and this is critical, you escalate the shared private reality. You build on what she confessed. You create an inside world references only you two understand, a language that belongs to this interaction alone. Now, She has bonded not to your appearance or your status, to the experience of being with you, an experience she cannot replicate with anyone else, because no one else knows what you now know. There's a reason this works on a biological level that most seduction advice ignores entirely. The female brain is wired to seek psychological safety before physical intimacy. Not safety in the soft sense, not comfort, not predictability. Safety in the sense of, can this man handle my full self without breaking? Every test she runs, consciously or not, is measuring this. Can he hold tension? Can he receive darkness? Can he witness her without needing to fix, flee, or judge? Most men fail these tests instantly. They get uncomfortable. They try to make things lighter. They reveal that they need her to be a certain way for them to feel okay. The man who passes, who remains grounded while she shows her depths, triggers something primitive. Her nervous system registers, this one is strong enough. This one won't shatter. This one can contain me. And containment is the deepest form of seduction. There's a story from the court of Louis XV that illustrates this perfectly. Madame de Pompadour, the most famous mistress in French history, was not the most beautiful woman at Versailles. She wasn't even the most charming. But she maintained the king's obsession for nearly 20 years. While younger, prettier rivals came and went. Her secret was not what happened in the bedroom. It was what happened everywhere else. She created a private universe with Louis. She knew his fears, his insecurities, his boredom with being ripped. She didn't treat him like a king. She treated him like a man, flawed, restless, hungry for something real beneath the gilded performance of royalty. When he confessed doubts about his legacy, she didn't reassure him with flattery. She sat with his uncertainty. When he revealed petty jealousies, unbecoming of a monarch, she didn't recoil. She made him feel that his smallness was safe with her. She became irreplaceable, not because she was exceptional, because the experience of being with her was exceptional. She had imprinted. When she died, Louis reportedly said, "She was the only woman in France who ever truly listened to me." Listening, that's it. But not passive listening. Active, penetrating, unflinching listening that made a king feel more seen than all the courtiers who spent their lives studying his every preference. Now, here's where men go wrong, even when they understand the principle. They mistake intensity for aggression. They think creating peaks means being provocative, challenging, or dominant in an obvious way. Wrong. The imprint is not about force. It's about depth. You don't create intensity by overwhelming her. You create it by going where others are afraid to go emotionally, conversationally, psychologically, and taking her with you. The man who asks about her dreams is forgotten. The man who asks about the dream she stopped chasing and why she stopped becomes permanent. The man who compliments her beauty as background noise. The man who notices the sadness she hides behind her smile and names it without trying to fix it becomes unforgettable. The difference is not technique. The difference is willingness. Willingness to occupy the space between comfortable and uncomfortable. To stay there while she adjusts to your presence. Most men live their entire lives in the shallow end because the deep end requires something they've never developed. Emotional steadiness under tension. Here's how you build that steadiness. First, you must become comfortable with silence. Silence is where intensity lives. The man who fills every gap with words is signaling that he cannot tolerate the weight of a moment. Practice letting silence stretch until it becomes almost unbearable. Then, stretch it further. Watch what happens. She will fill it. She will reveal herself. Second, you must eliminate the need for her approval. Not pretend to eliminate it. Actually, eliminate it. This requires knowing your own worth independent of her response. When you genuinely do not need her to like you, something strange happens. She begins trying to earn your approval. The polarity reverses. Third, You must develop comfort with her discomfort. When you ask the question that makes her pause, when you name the thing she didn't expect you to see, she will squirm. She might deflect, laugh nervously, challenge you. This is not rejection. This is her testing whether you'll retreat. If you hold steady, she stops testing. She surrenders into the moment. The mistake after imprinting is just as fatal as failing to imprint in the first place. Once you've created this bond, once you've become fused to peak emotional experiences, you must resist the urge to convert it into comfort. The average man, feeling he has won her, relaxes into predictability. He becomes available, consistent, safe, and slowly, without drama, the imprint fades. She cannot articulate what changed. She just knows something is missing. The man who once felt essential now feels like furniture. The imprint must be renewed. Not constantly. That would exhaust both of you. But periodically, there must be new depths, new transgressions, new moments where the script breaks and reality intensifies. The relationship that lasts is not the one that avoids tension. It's the one that regularly returns to the edge and survives. There's a final element that separates the men who weaponize this from the men who embody it. Intent. The techniques I've described can be used to manipulate, to extract, to create dependency for selfish ends. Used this way, they work briefly, but they leave wreckage. The man who understands the imprint at its deepest level recognizes something most miss. It works in both directions. When you create space for her to reveal herself fully, when you receive her without judgment, when you build a private world that belongs only to the two of you, you are also revealed. You're also received. You're also imprinted upon. The bond is mutual. The vulnerability is shared. The private world contains both of you. This is why Abelard couldn't escape Eloise's memory either. This is why Pompadour's death devastated Louis. The imprint, properly created, binds both parties. Used for conquest, it becomes a prison you build around yourself. Used for genuine connection, it becomes the rarest thing humans ever find. True intimacy. You now possess knowledge that most men spend lifetimes never acquiring. You understand that attraction is not a checklist of qualities, but an experience you create. You know that emotional peaks, forged neurological bonds, logic cannot break. You've seen how transgressive confession creates accomplices, how received vulnerability creates devotion, how steadiness under tension signals the strength she's biologically seeking. But knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. The next woman you meet is an opportunity, not to practice techniques that framing guarantees failure, but to practice presence, to practice asking the question beneath the question, to practice receiving whatever she reveals with the steadiness of a man who cannot be shaken. One real conversation. One moment where the script breaks. One confession received without flinching. That's where the imprint begins. And here is the thought I'll leave you with. Every woman you've ever lost, every connection that faded, every relationship that ended with her saying, "I don't feel it anymore." These did not fail because of what you lacked. They failed because of what you never created. She didn't need more dinners, more compliments, more texts asking how her day went. She needed to be taken somewhere she'd never been. She needed to feel something she couldn't find with anyone else. You had the capacity. You just didn't know. Now you do. If this changed something in you, if you felt the shift while listening, then you're not like most who pass through here. Subscribe now. What we discuss on this channel isn't designed for everyone. It's designed for the few who'd rather know uncomfortable truths than comfortable lies.